countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Gobble, last comic shoppers! It is now time for another week of the last comic shop!
Where we search through those never-ending rows of long boxes to make sure...
Hold it, wait. We aren't searching through nothing this week. You think I wouldn't put 2 and 6 together?
That's 8.
Yeah, this might be the week for turkey, but I've got some beef with you, Mr. Host with the most, Andy Larson.
Wait. Hold on. Bring those potatoes down to a simmer, Chad. Thanksgiving is a time for fellowship, not whatever this is.
Yeah, man, I made candy yams with marshmallows and everything.
And they're delightful. But don't think you can butter me up, Mr. Crescent Rolls, Mr. Candied Yams. Oh, these are good yams. Is that molasses?
Yes, well, the secret is to add that right at the end so it coats the yam.
We're not here to talk about potatoes. I have beef with Andy. See, I'm the official rating record keeper for our year in review, which is coming up. And I was tallying the results, and I discovered last week was our 100th show.
Yeah? And
100 shows means celebrations. They mean clip shows. They mean don't read a book that week so your hosts can slack off and enjoy the day. And this, sir, this will not stand.
Look, I've given you guys tons of days off already this year, as anyone that listens to our show regularly will attest.
Yeah, but that was then. This is this week. And on this most hallowed week of the giving of thanks, I demand that we give thanks for the fact that our fans have gotten 100 shows worth of comic book reviews.
By not giving them another comic book review?
Exactly. What better way to honor all 4 of our fathers, like Abraham Lincoln and Davy Crockett, who brought us together on this day to relax and watch football games and not read comics. And when we conquered the zombies that crossed the Potomac.
Zombies on the Potomac?
When Amelia Earhart,
forget it, he's rolling.
Flew us off into the Bermuda Triangles of Justice. And for all these things, we must celebrate. And yeah, I need a break.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to celebrate our 100th show in peace as well, with some turkey legs and terrible Detroit Lions football. So, yeah, let's go down in our vault. We'll rev up the Archive Rama 3000. I think it's fixed now. And we'll give our fans something from our archive. So let's see what we can find.
I still can't believe you didn't tell anybody last week was our 100th show. You know how many shows that is in dog years?
Dog years? Yeah, I'm not sure that's how things work.
Well, speaking of work, what past content should we pull up on the Archive Rama 3000 this week? J.A., it's your pick.
Well, what about in honor of all our great shows, we celebrate by featuring some of the terrific guests we've had on. Howard Chaykin, Mikey Wood, Ben Morse.
No, I like that idea. We did that review of Howard Chaykin's Twilight that we've never aired on this particular show.
And since I wasn't going to be on the show that week, I never finished. I'm really excited to hear about it.
That's right. Chad never got to hear this. So let's go ahead and rev up that Archive Rama 3000 here on that wonderful Turkey Day to give you all some things to give thanks for. All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our Read Pod with You. Yes, where we have comic book creators come onto our show and say, these are books that we like, and then make us read them. And that's what Ben Morse, our wonderful friend that we had on a previous show when he talked about his books, We Are Scarlet Twilight, in August. He recommended on that show that we check out Twilight. And as a result, we needed to have him back on the show to talk more about this awesome book. So, yeah, we got Ben back on the show. Welcome back to the Last Comic Shop, Ben.
Happy to be here. Especially glad to talk about this book, which is just endlessly fascinating with great art, great writing.
All right. Well, let's jump right into it. It was a 3-part miniseries done by who, J.A.?
Twilight was produced sort of for DC's Prestige line, written by Howard Chaykin with wonderful, wonderful, wonderful art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and colors by Steve Oliff, and Ken Brusinek did the lettering.
Let's get that 10-cent synopsis from Mikey Wood, who's a huge fan of the works of Howard Chaykin, as you might have heard when he gushed all over him during that awesome interview that you can check out on lastcomicshop.podcast.com. But yeah, what happens in this? Keep it to 10 cents, Mikey. Don't.
Oh, no, I'll keep it to 5 cents. It's basically the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with DC Comics Silver Age space characters like Tommy Tomorrow and Star Hawkins and the Star Rovers and Manhunter 2070 and Space Cat. All of these wonderful Silver Age space characters brought in and given Howard Chaykin's little twist on them. So,
And I won't lie, the only one that I had heard of prior to reading this week's book was Space Cappy, and I kind of sort of knew him from, I don't know, my kids watch, I think it's Justice League Action. That's
Justice League Action is awesome.
Yes, and I think Pat Oswalt does Space Cappy on that. So that was the only person that I knew. And so I had to look them all up. Tommy Tomorrow, kind of like almost like a sidekick in that series too. And then Star Rovers were 3 characters that would just find themselves in the same place a lot of the times. It was the way that I read it, it almost sounded like Wacky Races, where like they would just show up, but we're all trying to get the same thing, and here's the archaeologist, and here's the playboy, and here's the Mikey, have you read any of those original series?
I've read them because of Twilight, and you know, they're that Silver Age goofy kind of thing. You know, they're super fun.
The other one that shows up is Manhunter 2070, which I was trying to think, is that like just a continuation of all the other Manhunter characters that DC had at the time? Like it's not Paul Kirk or anything like that?
I don't believe so. I think it was like a showcase thing or something, if I remember correctly, and it was like a bounty hunter kind of situation, if I believe. Let me see. It was showcase number 91, Manhunter 2070. He's a bounty hunter. He's not a manhunter as far as like the no man escapes the manhunters. At least I don't think so. I'll have to read it. So he doesn't dress like one.
He definitely doesn't. He kind of dresses like Barry Windsor Smith's interpretation of Armstrong from the Archer and Armstrong comic. Yeah. Like it's the same bulky guy with dirty coat and
the art is paw.
It is. It's great. It's wonderful stuff. And I think that's where we're going to start with our initial thoughts. And this is Ben's book. Of all the books Ben could have picked for the last comic shop, like why this one? Like of all the books, you're like, no, I gotta.
So I think this is a good segue because what brought me to this book is the artwork. I am a gigantic Garcia Lopez fan. When you talk about comic book art, I don't think anyone has done it better or ever will do it better. So what was really cool about this is not only that it's his artwork, but it is him doing a really giant, epic science fiction tale. We've mentioned that there are a lot of characters from the 50s, 60s, Silver Age DC era. I think artistically, if you look at Garcia Lopez's work, it's generally really tight, very soft shading. He's done something very different in this book. He's kind of taken a bolder approach. It's heavier in line work. He does these spaceships that are really detailed, but he doesn't get into the rendering of them as much. Part of that is, I think, because they were leaving room for the amazing colors that Steve Oliff did, which at the time were really groundbreaking. But when you look at this artwork, I think there is a huge Mobius influence. There's a huge Mézières influence. The sort of new wave science fiction stuff we saw in the 70s from France and other places. So it's also an amazing stepping stone when you look at Garcia Lopez's regular work. When he draws Superman on a lunchbox or a comic book, it's amazing to see him do something different with this stuff while retaining like everything that's great about his stuff.
Yeah, incredible art. It was interesting. I think, Ben, you mentioned it earlier that Steve Oliff, the colors, it really did remind me of early Valiant work. You know, very clean lines, almost watercolory, the way the colors were applied. A Magnus Robot Fighter, sort of Bob Layton-esque.
100%.
And you can see where they were channeling that when they were at Valiant. They were channeling Twilight, and sort of this is a precursor to all that. And the double page spreads of those spaceships where it's so detailed, so intricate. It reminded me of these books I used to get when I was a child, of like a train scene in Europe where it's so detailed that you could go into the illustration and you can see this little tiny half-inch drawing of a man selling a baguette, in one little corner of this massive Paris train station or something. That's what it felt like, these giant panels of just spaceship. You could spend 10 minutes just looking at the little details, the intricacies of what's going on, kind of hidden behind the story. You even mentioned that, Mikey Wood, that every time you read it, you see something different, and you're picking up the names of some of these shops that, it's there. It's there for you to find. It doesn't add anything to it adds to the story, but it's like you don't need to read it or see it to understand what's going on. But then you see it again. It's just like an onion. You're peeling those little bits. And I think that's the art.
Garcia Lopez's stuff, it's sort of like a merging of his work in Atari Force and then something like Cinder and Ash that he did, which was like a real world detective book, which is great. And more people should read Cinder and Ash. It was a 4-issue miniseries. It was fabulous. But the lettering in it is really cool because Ken Bruzenak did American Flag, and American Flag is Chaykin's like masterpiece books, and one of the things about that book that's so fabulous is this lettering and the way that he does it. And when you read Twilight, you could see like the sound effects, especially, like it looks very much like American Flag, and that it's got that really cool vibe to it. This world feels like lived in, and it's dirty and broken, and so are the people.
Yeah, and I kind of want to pivot to that. I'm just going to put it out there. I love the artwork, and generally I do like Howard Chaykin's writing. Sometimes it's hard for me to get over. There's a lot of cynicism in his writing. There's a lot of darkness in his writing, and there's also a lot of layers, to be honest. And I think if you're coming into this book for the first time, if you're picking it up, if you find it, it can be daunting. Because especially if you don't know these characters from Adam, which most people don't. I mean, that's a blessing and it's a curse. It's a blessing because you can do whatever the heck you want with them because nobody cares about these people. It's not like Howard Chaykin's taking Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. Who cares what they do with Star Hawkins? Like, nobody knows who that person is. But at the same time, without that context of knowing who Star Hawkins is, some of the subtle winks and nods to that previous character that may have existed in the Silver Age, they go over your head. And then you're kind of like, all right, do I got to do research on this? Because if I do, I don't know if that's entertainment.
What you were saying about the characters is I don't think I was familiar with any of these characters. I actually don't think I've ever researched them in any detail. But I could tell from reading it the first time. They had a history I wasn't aware of, and I think the same way that we come into X-Men comics, or even people enter a soap opera, they're not coming in from the absolute beginning, but they sort of get their legs. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. In this story, I was not familiar with anybody in it. I think I'd probably heard the name Tommy Tomorrow. At the same time, I got which characters had histories from this thing. He was alluding to things without really going too much into it. And while I didn't know those things or necessarily research them, I understood the weight of the history of those characters. I think that gave it a lot more depth.
You can enjoy it just for what it is. You can enjoy it on face value for the 3 issues that takes up the thing, and you could see them as it. And then you can say, okay, who are these people? Where did he get the characters from? And then when you realize, I mean, it's not so much like I said League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in the beginning, but it's not like that in the case that in those books, Alan Moore has this encyclopedic knowledge of all British adventure characters, like things that you would not even references that the people like Sax Rohmer would read, and he wouldn't even know that was a reference to Alan Quatermain. I don't think it's like that. I don't think it's that in depth of a thing. And I always wonder how they come up with these pitches, like how he came up with this. Was he like, I want to do something with it, or did somebody come to him? Like I know I read just recently about Tom King King's Heroes in Crisis, and how King was actually given a list of characters he could use for the story. Like, he had the idea for the story already, and he had started writing it, and then DC was like, no, you can't use these characters, but you could use these guys. So I wonder, and at the time that this came out, this was 1990, 1991, nobody was into this kind of stuff. They were forgotten. Sometimes he writes stories that have a meaning other than the meaning, and then sometimes it's just adventure. It's just the story is what it is. So I wonder which one this is. I wonder if it's like a cynical talk about the longevity of characters and things to that effect, or I wonder if I'm just reading too much into it, and if it's just about I don't know.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, Mikey, about the fact that like maybe Howard had other characters involved, because some of them, I think the most interesting aspect of the entire story was, I think, the tail end of issue 1 into issue 2. Basically, you've got this explosion that happens. It kills one of the Star Rovers. The other one becomes a goddess incarnate. Yeah. And out of all this, then there's like this huge religion just comes out. Yeah. And it gets an opportunity for Howard to talk about how religion starts at a certain place. I think, isn't there a line somewhere that, like, if it hadn't been for Pontius Pilate, like, nobody would have cared about Christianity. Yeah. But at the same time, that character of the woman, if he actually had in his mind somebody that was more important to the DC universe, doesn't it seem like it should be somebody more important, like, I don't know, Wonder Woman, like, became the goddess?
Nope. I get a little bit of a Lois Lane vibe from her.
Somebody that's
tarnished Lois Lane a little bit, but
but I mean, those characters weren't what he was writing about. It's almost more interesting when you read, so she's just this person who's thrust into this position. If it was anybody more important, it would have had less of an impact. I mean, you also got to think about who Howard is as a writer. He's a 1960s New York Democrat Jewish guy who he has that cynicism oozing out of it, like and if everything you write has that sort of vibe to it. So it's just, I don't know, it just kind of made sense to me that a lot of clouds don't have silver linings. A lot of them just it's just a darker cloud.
There's a real like Philip K. Dick vibe about how he approaches Carol, the reporter character who becomes a god, and he mentions a lot of the sort of mundane things about her. For instance, that implant that is a news recorder of some kind has a hum. He always mentions hearing that hum. And I think that's such a visceral thing to put in a comic. Obviously, we see sound effects. I don't think they ever use that as a sound effect, but he mentions the sound effect. One of my favorite writers is Ian Fleming. The thing I like about the novels is if it's in a hot place, he describes it in a way that you feel really, you're sweating almost. If somebody gets punched, you feel it in your teeth. I think what Chaykin did here, especially when he approached Carol, and he said, "Oh, you always hear that hum of that recording device," and it's almost her trademark, and it becomes a very human thing to attach to what becomes a very godlike character. And he always takes pains. I think at one point, Homer, who's again sort of the narrator of the story more or less, mentions that he can always hear the hum, and he also sometimes hears her when they create like a church of her. And they have songs and psalms and all this stuff. She'll like hum the ones she likes to herself without realizing it. And it just gives you these incredibly like what I would think of as Fleming-esque or Philip K. Dick-esque touches that just really put you there. So even though they're like disjointed, in 12 issues it might have really gotten you into every facet of the characters. So you only glance on things that you might want to know more about. But he does at times give you really good touches of character that just you completely walk away feeling like you know these characters. You feel like you were there just a little bit.
And this is one of those kind of lesser known books. You could find this one in dollar bins and things like that. It always seems to me like some of the best books are the ones that not a lot of people paid much attention to for whatever reason.
Do you think it's because it's very dense? It's not the most approachable material. It's hard to get into. It's long. I mean, 50 pages just for one, and then you've got 3 issues of that. I think it can feel a bit daunting, especially to maybe newer comic book readers, or I mean, even myself. I picked it up. I started reading it, and I was like, 20 pages in. I'm like, What journey have I just signed on to? Because I have two choices here. I can soldier on and try to make sense of it, or I can go back and reread every single panel because I am lost. I'm in the weeds at this moment. Some Planet of the Apes guy just got his head cut off, and I don't know what's going on.
I'm still a little confused about that.
It was the idea of the revolution. You had these hybrid animal humans that had teamed up with machines, and they were, as human beings would react, the first thing they need to do is either subjugate them or destroy them, because that's what human beings do.
No, but were the ape robot revolution were they in the old comics? That's I understand the context. It's a story.
It's a good point.
It feels like they're being referred to, and I was always a little confused.
I don't know.
Because they get right into it.
It did make me think a little bit about Commandy a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say was, there were times with this that I thought that there were also rabbit holes. I don't know if this is really necessary. I get to the point that you want to try to make it the universe lived in. But if the entire story is just about how immortality is a curse, honestly, the Star Hawkins character, I don't know if that really added much to the story. Really, the story was about Carol and Tommy Tomorrow. Yeah. Like they were the yin and the yang of that story, and their conflict was what the story was about.
It felt like it was Star Hawkins. It was like, Star Hawkins was like a cool guy in the comics, but really he was a dick. Like that's everything about Star Hawkins in Twilight seemed like that.
Yeah. In the old comics, it was the robot sidekick that did everything basically, and and Star Hawkins took credit for it. There's also an underlying theme of people's perception and how someone is created into something, and the legend that they. So you could almost go back and look at those old comics if you wanted to, as being propaganda about these guys, like Billy the Kid and Jesse James, and they were immortalized and made into heroes in the dime novels because they read these adventures, and so you could almost look at the comics as these sort of like pulp dime store or dime novel adventures of these people that were actually very flawed and very broken and all these other things, which is funny because people tend to forget that Billy the Kid murdered people,
but at the same time, like, why is Star Hawkins there? Like, why is the character, why not? It's, if you're trying to tell a story, I'm sorry, like some of these things they just seem to be taking up pages in the narrative, which you could cut the narrative down from 50 to 30, make it more digestible to readers, and just not even have these stories. Like your ultimate story and the story that makes sense. Because I honestly, I got to certain parts with Star Hawkins, I was just like, he's just going to be a dick for the next couple of pages. Well, who cares about this story?
He's mean to everybody. You hate him.
Like his brother, actually, the Manhunter 2070 character actually has somewhat of an arc. He reminds me of that grizzled old gunslinger character that like fell in love and had, and then got all beaten up and runs from town to town. And,
you feel for him a lot.
You do. But at the same time, he also has nothing to do with the plot either. He's just there. It's a subplot. He just kind of
turns up at the end, and that's what it was all about.
Yeah, I guess. I'm just saying, like, to Jay's point, I think you could have cut some of this stuff out, made it a more consistent story, and probably it would have sold better. That's my thought. The thing
I think about with Twilight, as I become more familiar with the Silver Age characters, not that I've gone back and read a lot of the old comics, which I one of these days, as everyone says, I think of Kingdom Come a lot. There are things in Kingdom Come that happen because we need to see, all right, what's Aquaman doing? Aquaman has to be something with this, right? It's not really relevant to the story, but you have to address it. A lot of this feels like Paul Levitt saying, like, do these characters, no less and no more. Howard Chaykin.
That makes sense to me. If it was an editorial mandate.
Yeah, because if you look at like how Alan Moore wanted to do Watchmen, he wanted to do the Charlton Heroes. And they're like, yeah, maybe not. He had a sense of like, I want to take these particular people and do something with them. I don't know if there's a mandate, but maybe Chaykin or someone who approached the story and had some input was like, these characters ought to be involved, or people would maybe expect them to be involved. Because there are things, like you're right, both Hawkins and Starker, you could take them out and the story would be fine. It would be exactly the same.
All right, so it's now time for ratings. So we're going to go ahead and give this, as we often do on the Last Comic Shop, a 1 out of 4 scale. And J.A. is going to be nice enough to give us that 1 out of 4 scale for Twilight.
Have fun with this one. 1 out of 4 Eternal Lives.
Ooh. Well, that was easy enough. It sounds like the heaven's gates opening up. That seems fine. Great sound effect. All right, so we're going to start off with you, J.A. You came up with this. How many eternal lives are you living?
So I'm going to give it a solid 3. As I said, it's dense. I found it a little bit hard to approach, and on rereading parts, it improved. So it's like a fine wine. You have to let it sit, I think, and open up a bit. But the artwork, if you just get it for the artwork alone, it's more than enough. And then everything that we talked about, with Howard Chaykin brings to the table, it's great. If you can find it in buck bins, that's even better. I highly recommend reading it. Again, it is a bit dense, so give yourself some time and push through, I would say. Mm-hmm. That would be my advice for people who are struggling with the content.
All right, Mikey, you're up next. How many eternal lives are you giving it?
Out of 4, I'm gonna say I'll say like a 3.5. Yeah, I can see why it would be. The narration boxes kind of throw people off because if you don't remember who's talking, it's kind of like, wait a minute, One of my first experiences with Howard Chaykin's writing was Black Hawk, and that was a really dense 3-issue thing too. So I love it. And as much as I love Chaykin's artwork, which I do, the Garcia Lopez is like an added wonderful thing in there. There you go.
That's fine. I'll go up next. I'm going to give this probably a 2.75.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because you know me. I am not the biggest Howard Chaykin fan.
Yeah.
I will say this, that if you're picking this up, it was probably better when it was released back in the day when you could take about a month off in between readings. It's sometimes a problem with this particular show that I've got to read all 3 books back to back. This is the kind of book with the denseness that things started to bleed into each other after a while. And I felt myself going oh boy, here's another huge text box that I got to read. I'm trying to follow this plot about Tommy, Tomorrow, and Carol. That's the plot I'm in. I like those characters. I like Homer. Those are the characters I'm invested in. I don't need all this other stuff. And so it became very distracting after a while. And if I got to call a spade, when I get distracted with a comic book, I start tuning out. I start putting it down. And so it's one of those things where it was, to Jay's point, it was a little bit of a struggle at times. I got to admit, though, that the art saves it. The art saves it so many times. And some of it's gruesome. There's a scene at the end of issue 1 where Tommy Tomorrow runs up and I don't know, grabs what is in essence a Smurf and just starts eating it, devouring it like it's Sunday's chicken.
Because it gives you eternal life.
Garcia Lopez actually somehow makes that look sort of normal, which is only more horrifying.
Right. It's fine that we're eating these. No, it's not. This thing.
Well, he's also crazy. He's also a madman. And the other character there, whose last name is Wood, actually, it's really funny. He's the only one that almost gets laid too in the whole book, which is really funny. No relation, by the way, to me. But he's standing there what are you doing? He's watching this guy eat these little duck people, and actually they're almost genocide that grants her godlike powers, which is kind of
and it's great imagery. That next page where she's hitting the godhood, and it's her on top of her on top of her on top of her in the mushroom cloud. That's a great image.
I still don't understand how it works, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought she died. I was just is she dead? And then she comes back as the queen next time. I'm okay, she didn't die. All right, who cares? And that's the kind of thing. It was just if there's enough moments like that where I'm who cares? I'm just going to move forward. It can't be a 3. I'm sorry. I hate to break some hearts, but that's me.
I've noticed that you always say things could be cut down, whereas I never want less comics ever. I guess that's why I prefer the Lord of the Rings extended editions over the original ones. And
I mean, as a writer, I have all these ideas. They're all there in my head. These characters have these aspects, but then there's the roller coaster ride a story needs to be.
Yeah.
it's hard to wrestle with.
Right. And sometimes less is more. Less is sometimes more. And sometimes, if you have these wonderful visuals too, why don't you let the visuals sometimes speak for the story? I just don't get it.
It's like story economics is kind of what it is. It's conservation of story. It's like cut out all that. I have a hard time with that, you know.
Yeah,
I do too. You got your eye on that roller coaster ride. Like, this is a 4-issue series, whatever it is. You've got to frame your experience to that level, and Twilight doesn't really do that. You're correct.
Right. It should be more of like a 12-issue epic, but it's not. It's 3 issues, and so therefore everything seems very rushed and crammed. A lot of these concepts need time to breathe. But you're not giving them any time to breathe. You're just jumping to the next thing, and I get it. Then you've got to cut the fat. Howard Chaykin, you've got to cut the fat because we only have so much of our stomach for this steak. So, anyways. Ben, what's your rating? How many Eternal Lives are you giving this? It was your pick, so it's got to be.
So, art-wise, just to be an aside, art-wise, this is an 89.5 out of 4. As a comic, I'm going to give it a 3, and I wouldn't even qualify with 3. I've mentioned David Lynch's Dune a lot in context with his story. That's a flawed movie. It's actually a terrible movie, but there's just so much there to go back to. It's rich. There is just so much to plumb there. If you're a viewer, you can watch it a million times. There is so much visual stuff. There is just a lot to feast on, and there's a lot to think about. I think this story does that. I will say that I prefer a story that just goes a little bit too high, gives you a little bit too much, doesn't pace it out right, but gives you a lot to think about, a lot to come back to. I've read Twilight probably 20 times. I got into it for the art, and I still go back to it for the art. But there's a richness to the story that I keep going back to and discovering because it hints to a large world, a lot of rich characters. There's a lot to uncover. Okay. I think if you are a cold plot person, how does this work? It's probably a 1.5. I mean, if you just need to go from point A to point B, it doesn't do that. But it does offer a lot, and that's why I have to give it a 3.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you and J.A. get us to the commercial break. I don't care what you say.
Let's go to commercial.
Sounds good.
You guys are dicks. Okay.
Hey, Last Comic Shop. This is Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast and one half of the YouTube channel Kyle Nick on Film, saying congratulations on your 100th episode. It's a great milestone in podcasting, as we all know. I love listening to you guys when I'm making my own comic books for Parapet Comics LLC. And also I want to say thank you for you guys' support of my shows as well. It means a lot. And so, once again, congratulations on your 100th. I'm looking forward to another 100 episodes. And if you are interested, let's do it again when you reach 200. Congratulations, guys. Well done.
All right, we're back for the Last Comic Shop. Gobble, gobble. It is more of our Turkey Day 101st show extravaganza thingy. Chad didn't want to do any work, and now that we're done with that particular part of the show with the review, it looks like we still need to fill some time. So, suggestions?
Yeah. Why don't we look at all those voicemails that people keep leaving us, or we ask them to leave us? Because, you know, we didn't get to all of them the last time.
Right, that is true. And there may be some more from some of our former guests that wished us well. Our 100th show last week.
Because they knew and we didn't.
You're never going to let this down, are you?
I have a really bad memory, so next week. But for now, oh no.
Well, here's some more. Here, eat some more turkey. That's got tryptophan. Maybe you'll fall asleep. But anyways, yeah, let's rev it up and see what kind of messages were left by our former guests.
Our gracious guests.
Welcome to the Archive Rama 3000 voicemail messaging service. Loading message 6112.
Hey guys, Allen Dunford here, co-writer and co-creator of Pocus Hocus and Grandma Chainsaw. First off, I just want to say congratulations to you guys, and thank you all so much for always being so warm and welcoming to me every time I need to come on and pitch a new stupid project that I'm working on. But yeah, so my question for you guys is, what comic book character, superhero, whatever, do you guys clash on with a difference of opinion? For example, one of you guys thinks Batman's awesome, and then the other one's wrong and thinks he's not. All right, thank you guys again for everything, and I'm sure I'll be back on soon bugging you guys again.
So that was our great question from Allen Dunford, the writer of Hocus Hocus and Grandma Chainsaw and a lot of great stuff. And we had him on a show just a couple months ago.
And I was going to say, and dude that's welcome to come back anytime he'd like.
Yeah.
I'd love to have Alan.
Absolutely. And so that's a great question from Allen. Comic book characters that we clash on regularly.
So I can't think of any characters. No, that's not true. There's a couple. But I can't think of anything where all three of us have diametrically different positions.
Oh, really? Because I'm not a huge fan of the X-Men, and you guys love the X-Men. I'm in that minority that thinks, like, most of the X-Men books are crap. Like, they just go on for too long, and, like, and maybe it was just because I was reading in, like, the late 80s and 90s, and everybody was into them, and the Jim Lee art, and like it was towards the tail end of the Chris Claremont, so like Chris was starting to get supplanted by more of the art, and so like I don't know. I never got Omega Red. Can anybody explain to me what the appeal of Omega Red was? Like Russian, yet he was blonde, yet he had tentacles, yet he had like 6 different action figures.
Yeah. What else do you need explained? But no, that's the thing though. Like I know you and I, Andy, will have beef sometimes when it comes to Bendis. You are not a Brian Michael Bendis fan.
Right.
And I tend to really enjoy Bendis stuff. Yeah.
That does remind me of something where I think we're diametrically opposed.
What's that?
Chad and I actually enjoyed the Dan Slott, Mike Aldred, Surfer run.
I was just going to say, but everyone hates what Dan Slott does to their favorite character, but likes what Dan Slott does to other characters.
Right.
So are we opposed, or are we in agreement on what Dan Slott is, which is an evil, evil man when it comes to your favorite character?
Oh, my goodness. This is supposed to be the thanks here on Thanksgiving, not calling folks evil, but I agree.
I can't argue. He wrote Spider-Man for like 10 years. I hated just about all of it.
And I was not a fan of his Fantastic Four run, but I don't care about the Silver Surfer, never have. And boy, was Mike Allred's art beautiful, especially that Mobius strip issue. That was just ingenious.
And it was like Doctor Who, but I don't watch Doctor Who, so it was all new to me. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, really, it wasn't that terrible, J.A. Yeah, it was.
Yes, it was.
I honestly think, to the benefit or detriment, depending on how you want to look at it, one of the things about our podcast is we generally try to find the good in comics. We like comics. We enjoy reading. We enjoy talking about them. We have fun doing this stuff. Somebody can usually find something good about it. So it's hard to find stuff that we are too far apart on, right, at least at the end of the day. Like somebody can find something.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Dan Slott, Mike Aldred, Silver Surfer, I was glad that at least Silver Surfer had a book out. It was nice that there was a book, that there were stories to read. It's too bad that they were horrible stories, but at least they were stories.
Is there characters that we can all agree stink? Like, how about that? That maybe is an interesting question. Like, we all hate Green Lantern, right? Like, we all hate him. Like, he's
I
Black
like
Adam?
Gardner.
I don't know. Or was it just that story that we had to read that was bad?
Black Adam was awful.
I still love The Rock, though.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't think the Black Adam character is so bad as it's just the story was bad. I think he was not given a lot to do.
What about Spawn? Do we like Spawn or no? I do not like Spawn. I am not a fan of the Spawn.
Yeah, the pictures are pretty.
The Youngblood character with the bow that has no bowstring.
Shaft!
Never understood how he shot the arrows with no bowstring.
He's all shaft, baby. Doesn't need a string.
There one guy called Grimlock on there. Am I remembering that right?
No, that's the Transformer. Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, the best Transformer. But
oh yeah, there's no question about that. He is the best. Him, and then maybe Starscream, and then Soundwave. Yeah, they're in the top 3. Anyways, yeah, no, it was Bedrock, and then eventually Badrock.
Yeah, 3 issues in, he got sued, so it became Badrock for the rest of the run.
Wait, why did he get sued? Who sued him?
He got yabba dabba sued.
I just love those issues of Youngblood because at the time, J.A. was reading some of them, and he was just like, you know what? I'm going to come up with comic book characters. One of them's going to be named Topside. That's like, that is a Rob Liefeld name.
Everybody talks smack on the Rob Liefeld, but he brings energy. He's fun. I don't care. These guys hate Rob Liefeld.
Well, somebody else that brings a lot of fun and has done so in the past is K.Lynn Smith, the wonderful comic writer and artist of wonderful things like Plume and Hope and For Goodness Sake. And she's got a great web comic out there right now. And she left us a voicemail message. Let's take a listen to what the wonderful K.Lynn Smith said.
Loading message 6111.
Hi guys, K.Lynn Smith here, and I want to wish you a very happy 100th episode. Holy crap, you did it. It was an absolute blast being on the show, and I can't wait until we hang out again. And now, I gotta ask, have you ever regretted reading a comic book? Again, guys, congrats, and on to the next 100.
All right, so that was a great question by K.Lynn Smith. She can come back on our show anytime. Definitely a ray of sunshine among these dusty comic book shelves.
Heck yeah, and always pleasant to run into at the comic conventions.
Oh, yes. She's one that I definitely love chatting with every single time I get an opportunity to. But yeah, comic books that we have regretted reading. Boy, I've read so many that, yeah, there's a good long list of those that I can probably think of off the top of my head. From Hell by Alan Moore. People will probably give me shit about that, but like, boy, that was a slog. I can't get those 2 weeks back.
I rarely regret reading books, even if they're bad. But the one for me is one I recommended before I finished. And I feel kind of guilty about that. On our 2021 Christmas show, I told J.A., I was like, oh, you have to check out Amazing Fantasy, which I had read the first issue, and it had some promise there. And I had seen the covers, and I'm like, oh, you should see, there's Mohawk Storm, and it's, Frank Frazetta, Conan the Barbarian-esque, but in space style, and it looked real cool. And then we read the story, and I shouldn't have recommended that one. So that's a regret.
Oh, no, I don't regret that just simply because it had nice covers. Like, at the end of the day, I still enjoyed the covers and the art was still pretty good. You're right, it was kind of a letdown of a story compared to what it promised. You're right, Chad. The difficulty thing is art is art. But yeah, Avengers Disassembled, boy, that was a regret. Shouldn't have read that. That just made me angry.
Turned you against Bendis forever, 30 years later.
And going hand in hand with that, Civil War II. Boy, that was awful. That was awful. Talk about writing a series just around the fact that there was an original Civil War. Somebody at the top level of Marvel is just like, this is all the things we have to do. We have to kill Hulk. We have to bring a lot of new characters in. We have to have Captain Marvel be more prominent in the universe. We have to have Iron Man be a douche nozzle again. Let's come up with an event that does all these things. And you're just like, yeah, I guess we can do this, but
you're not reading a story. You're reading a story outline.
Right, exactly. You're reading a grocery list. Cheese, milk, these are the things you got to pick up, not a cohesive narrative. There's so many events that I read that I regretted reading. Infinite Crisis, that sucked. Final Crisis, that sucked.
Wait, one of them gave us Jamie Reyes, the cool Blue Beetle. They also shot the other cool Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, the head that started off. So yeah, never mind. I'm with you.
There was that, what was it? Final Crisis was the one with like Darkseid being just like a hobo in the basement.
Right.
It's like, oh, really? Really? This is kind of dumb. J.A., you haven't said a lick. What have you regretted?
So I was originally going to say I regretted reading Hard Corpse. Because
don't ever say for a second you regretted any of those Valiant titles. You were like Valiant fanboy number one.
Because I was Valiant fanboy, exactly. And that was like the start of, well, maybe it's not so great. But then I really thought about it. And it was Rye and the Future Force. Because I so loved Rye, the original character of Rye, and then they reimagined him, and he got Bloodshot's blood in him, And I was just like, ugh. And it was the beginning of the end for my love of Valiant and all things Valiant. And then I think like maybe half a year later, I sold all my comic books. And like a month after that, the bubble burst. And all the comic books that I sold for like $40, $50, $60 were worth like
nothing.
So would you say Ryan the Future Force is where things started going awry?
Yes.
I did have a question for you, though, because as a huge Valiant fan, what are your thoughts on Ninjak? One of the most popular, famous Valiant characters, but he was one of those characters that came in at the tail end. So, do you like Ninjak?
No, and also not a big fan of Bloodshot. So, Shadow Man, yes, kind of cool. Solar, definitely. Magnus, definitely. Archer and Armstrong, yes. Eternal Warrior, yes. Yeah, Harbinger, the originals, yes. Sting and
Exo
Man of the Warrior, as I recommended a couple of weeks ago. The original issues were pretty good, and then after that, it was okay. When they got rid of the man out of time aspect of it, and he was just this rich guy who has a suit of armor, it was a bit like he's Iron Man, but, from Sweden.
It's a Swedish Iron Man. It's always nice hearing you talk about Valiant, so that is never
Andy, there's a thing with the smoke and the thing. I don't think it's supposed to burn like that.
Did somebody put the turkey in the Archive Rama 3000? I told you guys not to cook with it. We gotta have place else. Oh man. Oh, but there goes the Archive Rama 3000.
Yeah. What are we gonna do? We still have show.
That's true. We do have show, and we don't have any more voicemail messages. We're stuck. We can't just go to end break. This is our 100th show.
Whoa, hey guys, how's it going down here? I heard a noise.
Oh my gosh, it's George from Shortbox Summary. This is awesome. What are the chances? The Archive Rama 3000 breaks and you stroll into the shop. Oh, welcome. Do you have a question for us? Because that's what we're doing right now. I know you're probably here for some other reason.
I do. I gotta say that this place is huge. Why don't we ever hang out down here? There's 6 air hockey tables. I feel like I'm in a drug dealer's basement. What's going on?
Well, it's J.A. He loves air hockey. And we got one, and then we had to get another because that one was the Canadian one. And
it's all about the airflow, too. You've got to get the perfect airflow coming up from the bottom of the table or the pucks won't work. I hate a sticky puck.
So what's your question, George, and to finish off our 100th episode?
I'm sick of people flip-flopping. Andy, Chad, Jay. Oh. I need people to make a stand. I want you to plant a flag and make a definitive statement. Okay?
Ooh.
Okay.
So
ready to plant.
That's right. My soil is ready. Mulch away. So we all know the MCU. We all like the MCU. Some of us even love the MCU. But I want to know, what is the official Last Comic Shop ranking of the top 5 pre-MCU Marvel movies? I want this to be the definitive list, that this is the official stamp of Last Comic Shop.
Wow.
Do we brainstorm on this, or do I just tell you the answer?
Yeah, well, it comes down to which is better, Spider-Man 2
or Spider-Man 2.1. You're right.
Or X-Men 2.
Additional minutes.
Yeah, he's got a point. X2 is a pretty damn good movie.
Listen, I like Frasier as much as the next guy, but that doesn't compete with Spider-Man 2.1 and J.K. Simmons and the best casting ever in a comic book movie, nay, any movie in the history of cinema, as Jonah Jameson.
Fine. So that's our number one. I'm going to plant that flag, and I'll back that up. Majority rules. Number 1 is Spider-Man 2. That is the best pre-MCU Marvel movie. That's the best one. Number 2, I'm going to give J.A. his pick of X2. I think, sincerely, X2 is a really great movie. It's probably the best one of that particular franchise as well. So those are the best 2. After that...
It gets shaky.
It gets real.
Well, no, you could. What about Blade? No, because hear me out. You could call Blade the precursor to all of this because it came, I think, before even X-Men and the Spider-Man movie.
Fine. It was 2 years before X-Men, so we talk about this a lot on Shortbox Summary. We haven't done a ranking yet because I'm not brave enough to do it, to be honest.
Right.
But you three are the bravest people I know. You spent all this money on air hockey tables. The least you could do is rank your movies. So I'm just going to throw out some other movies that fall under this banner. So we got Blade. Thank you, Jay, for mentioning that. That would be in my top 3 for sure. The original X-Men, Blade 2, Spider-Man, Daredevil, X2, Ang Lee's Hulk, which I'm going to say is a bad Hulk movie, but an incredible Bruce Banner movie.
I agree with that one.
There was some neat stuff in there, and Hulk dogs.
I watched so much behind-the-scenes stuff. Industrial Light and Magic was so proud of that poodle.
He did all that panel stuff in that one, right?
Yeah. I actually really like that. I wish that was something that would have continued in a better movie. Anyway, any others?
The Punisher.
Which one?
Okay.
Which one?
The Thomas Jane one?
The Thomas Jane one.
That one's not bad.
No.
Yeah,
Dolph Lundgren. The Dolph Lundgren.
Punisher in name only with Dolph Lundgren. Spider-Man 2, Blade Trinity, Elektra, Fantastic Four, X-Men The Last Stand, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man 3, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. And then the next movie that came out was Iron Man, so everything after that, I'm sorry, Punisher Warzone, I'm sorry, X-Men Origins Wolverine, I'm sorry, First Class, you don't count. You're in a post-MCU world.
Yeah, you don't need to apologize for any of those.
Hold on. Where is Howard the Duck? Howard the Duck is a pre-MCU Marvel movie directed by George Lucas. It's got a duck and a girl having sex.
Leah Thompson, of all people. Good God.
The girl, Leah Thompson.
I try to be really positive on Shortbox Summary. I love your show because you also try to be positive. You disagree with each other all the time, but it never feels personal. It never feels like it's bordering violent. It never feels like a conversation that nerds are having. It feels like a conversation that adults are having, which is why I like your show so much. That said, screw Howard the Duck. Screw Howard the Duck all the way into the sun, man. I try to be positive, but that movie, there's literally nothing redeeming about that movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a toughie. All right, let me throw one out there for the crowd again. And you guys know I have my penchant for the director's cuts of movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know I love Daredevil, the director's cut.
Yes.
Which has 100% more Coolio and is therefore 100% more Coolio.
I haven't seen it, so I can't rank it. That's a stretch.
You're right. It's 100% more Coolio. It's also 30 minutes longer than the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
Listen, Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin is inspired casting.
But Jennifer Garner as Elektra?
It's like, she's definitely not Greek. The most like foreign she is like Toronto. Like we talked about that on the show.
As long as you ignore the Elektra movie, I thought it was fine for this one. Anyway, any other ideas for 3 on 9?
Number 3 for me has got to be Spider-Man. If I'm going to go Spider-Man 2, X2, Spider-Man's probably number 3. Spider-Man 3 is garbage for the most part, but Spider-Man is a fairly decent movie.
They did too much in Spider-Man 3. Jay, any thoughts?
I liked it, yeah, and it was the first time we'd seen something like that done. The last movie we had was Spider-Man was that like Japanese Spider-Man.
And two, the other thing I love about the Spider-Man movie that everybody sort of forgets, that was one of the first big movies post 9/11. And boy, did it capture that feeling. Parts of it might be a little bit cheesy, and it's not a perfect movie. And boy, would I have loved had they gone a different route with the Green Goblin costume. But it was the right movie at the right time.
And Randy Savage was so into his role that he spent 30 years wrestling, preparing for that role. Because Rosa is ready.
Okay, Andy, fun fact. One of my friends, a guy, Aaron, one of my favorite people, he is holding I think he's holding the O for the Bonesaw sign in the stands. That was his first
awesome.
day. He just moved to LA and his buddies were like extras and like, hey, we need you. Like, can you come tonight? And so he's the O in Bonesaw.
That is one of the best stories I've heard. That's the top 3. So then we got 4 or 5. Are there any other good
Blade.
ones?
Well, you got to put Blade in there.
Fine. Blade's 4. Wesley Snipes.
Is Blade better than Blade 2, though?
Blade 2 have Ryan Reynolds in it.
That's Blade 3. That's Trinity.
Dang it. Which one's the one with Triple H?
That's 3 as well.
Trinity.
Son of a gun. Can we go with Blade 3?
No.
We have Steven Dorff on this list. I don't know.
Steffendorf.
Steffendorf. My apologies.
Right. Well, so yeah, we've got the top 4. Number 5.
If it's not Daredevil, the director's cut, then I go back to X1. Surprisingly good on such a low budget.
Really? What about, other than Galactus as a B Cloud? The Silver Surfer was pretty good, and Rise of Silver, I mean, it wasn't a bad movie.
My sad admission, I've never seen it all the way through. I fell asleep 4 times.
You're missing out. That's a quality movie. I like the original Fantastic Four, too. Michael Chiklis is the thing. I like just saying his name. It's like Chicklets.
Yeah, but Dr. Doom in that is so bad.
They're great movies. To fall
I think X-Men 1's got to be there.
They're melatonin the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think X-Men 2, Spider-Man 2, and Blade. That's our 5.
All right, there you go. That's our flag. We have planted it.
When they're not looking, I'm going to sneak Daredevil the director's cut on this list. It's so coolio!
No, we have planted our flag. We are done. And make sure that you come back for more flag planting in future with our next 100 episodes of The Last Comic Shop. You can do that by going out to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all of our episodes. They're evergreen. You know, if you've read a book and you're like, gosh, now I got to see if The Last Comic Shop has an episode about it, do that thing. Download them all. Spend your Thanksgiving, your Black Friday as you're shopping for deals. Spend it listening to our show, because we'll keep you in plenty of turkey and stuffing for sure. That's our promise.
I was going to say that segues perfectly into a poll we'll have to run. What is the best non-MCU Marvel movie?
Well, that's not fair. I don't want to, like, all due respect to, like, Logan, but, like, I mean, it's a little playing with a stacked deck against the original Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
But Chad, where can they find that poll that will be out this week?
On the social medias, we are at Last Comic Shop, or you can always head back to the website, Last Comic Shop Podcast. Jay, what do we have to celebrate our 100th episode?
We have a new redesigned T-shirt, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's getting to the Christmas month. Make sure that you're checking out our Christmas version of the Last Comic Shop shirt. And then with the Christmas logo, it'll be back just in time for the holidays. It's Black Friday. Get out to our website. Those things will be on sale. So make sure that you pick up that holiday shirt for your loved ones this Christmas.
Can we get some Last Comic Shop jammies?
With the feet? With the feeties?
I need some coasters personally, and a big thing I want in my house is, you know, those old, like, bubble gum, like you put a quarter in and then you twist it. Yeah. If I could get a Last Comic Shop one of those,
nice.
Great.
We will look into that, sir.
Like a vending machine?
That's not quite what I'm thinking of.
Oh, like a gumball machine.
Gumball machine.
That is the word.
There
Sorry.
you go.
It's hard to think over the sound of all these air hockey pucks hitting the wall.
Very
so,
nice.
Make sure that you check out that merch, and also make sure that you check out Shortbox Summary. George, thank you so much for saving the last half of this final segment of our show by asking this question. So why did you stop by?
Oh, I was hoping to pick up my pull list.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're a comic shop. While I take care of that, make sure that you take care of coming back to the Last Comic Shop. I'm the host of the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith, J.A. Scott, and again, thank you for listening to our first 100 episodes. Remember, until next week, stay safe, stay listening, because we've got more stuff for you. And remember that we're all turkeys here at the Last Comic Shop.
Speak for yourself. I'm the turkey. Thanks for all the people that sent in questions. Thanks for all the people that downloaded us. Thanks for all the 100 who's and who's and what's.
in the not-too-distant future, following the rapid succession of World Wars III and IV, plus the hidden horrors of Secret World War II. There's not much left. All that remains is a place where folks get together to read and discuss comic books. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they argue, but they always record and upload their transmissions. You've found one of those transmissions today. Welcome to The Last Comic Shop.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2022 Black Angus production.